The fluorescent light in the service corridor flickered 3 times before dying, completely plunging the narrow hallway into darkness. Kesha Williams pressed her palm against the cold concrete wall, feeling for the light switch she knew was somewhere near the supply closet. The industrial-strength bleach from her cleaning cart burned her nostrils, mixing with something else. The faint trace of Tom Ford Oud Wood Cologne, $360 an ounce, lingering from when Richard Sterling had passed through here hours earlier to check on his private wine collection. Her fingers found the switch. Nothing. The backup generator should have kicked in by now. She pulled out her phone. The screen showed 2:47 a.m. In 13 minutes, she'd need to be on the 52nd floor in the penthouse that cost more than most people earned in 3 lifetimes. The same penthouse where she'd been cleaning for 6 months, invisible as the Italian marble she polished twice a week. The phone's flashlight illuminated her path as she pushed the cart toward the service elevator. Inside her uniform pocket, 3 items pressed against her hip: a calculator she'd bought at the dollar store, a mechanical pencil with a broken clip, and a USB drive smaller than her thumbnail. The first 2 were props. The third contained 6 months of photographed documents that could destroy an empire built on $847 million of laundered money. The service elevator groaned as it climbed. 37th floor, 38th. At the 45th, it shuddered and stopped. Kesha's heartbeat remained steady. 3 years of night shifts had taught her that panic was a luxury she couldn't afford. She pressed the emergency button. Nothing. Through the elevator shaft, she could hear something unexpected. Voices from the penthouse 5 floors above. Richard Sterling was supposed to be at his Thursday night poker game until 4 a.m. She'd memorized his schedule down to the minute. Thursday nights were sacred to him. High-stakes games with Judge Morris and Commissioner Bradley, and the kind of men who decided which neighborhoods got funding and which got forgotten. The Brazilians want an answer by morning. Sterling's voice carried down the shaft that particular bass note of authority that made janitors look away and executives lean in. Tell them we'll move the funds through the Cayman account, same as the Mumbai deal. Kesha pulled out her phone and opened the recording app. The old iPhone 7, cracked screen held together with clear tape, had served her well. No one suspected a janitor's phone could record in high-definition timestamp conversations or automatically upload to 3 different cloud servers. The elevator lurched back to life, rising slowly. 50th floor, 51st. When the doors opened on 52, she saw him immediately. Richard Sterling stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, his back to her, still in his Brioni suit despite the hour. The city lights below painted golden patterns across the marble floor. Marble she'd memorized every vein of, knowing that each square foot cost more than her mother's monthly medication. "Mr. Sterling," she said, keeping her voice neutral, professional. "I apologize for the late arrival. The service elevator malfunctioned." He didn't turn around. "You're 7 minutes late." "Yes, sir. In my world, 7 minutes can cost $7 million. He finally turned, and she saw something different in his expression. Not the usual dismissive glance that slid over her like she was furniture. Tonight his gray eyes actually focused on her face. "But I suppose in your world 7 minutes is nothing." Kesha set down her supplies, movements deliberate and calm. Inside the cart's bottom compartment, hidden beneath bottles of cleaning solution, her advanced calculus textbook waited. She'd been leaving it visible for 3 weeks now, each time in a slightly more obvious position. Tonight was the night he'd finally notice. "Actually, Mr. Sterling, 7 minutes is everything in my world." She pulled out the mop, her mother's words echoing in her mind. "Sometimes the best weapon is letting them think they've already won." 7 minutes is the difference between catching the 5:15 a.m. bus or walking 3 miles. 7 minutes of overtime is a gallon of milk for my sisters. He laughed, that particular rich man's laugh that sounded like ice cubes clinking in aged whiskey. Fascinating. The cleaning lady has opinions about time management. She began mopping, working her way methodically across the floor. The Carrara marble reflected her movements, creating a shadow version of herself that moved in perfect synchronization. In the reflection, she could see Sterling had returned to his desk, shuffling through papers he thought she couldn't read. Construction permits for the Riverside development. She recognized the project. It was supposed to be low-income housing funded by federal grants. But the numbers on his papers showed luxury condos, the grant money diverted through shell companies she'd tracked for months. "Don't clean there yet," he said sharply when she approached his desk. "I'm working." She nodded, moving to the bookshelf instead. First edition novels he'd never read, arranged by spine height rather than author or subject. The kind of library that existed for photographs in Architectural Digest, not for actual reading. On the third shelf, wedged between a leather-bound Shakespeare and a gold-embossed Bible, she spotted something that made her pulse quicken. A red folder, unmarked, slightly protruding from the shelf. She'd seen him reference it during phone calls, but never leave it out. Her hand moved automatically, adjusting the books as she dusted. The folder shifted, revealing a label on its spine. Phoenix Accounts, strictly confidential. "You missed a spot." Sterling's voice came from directly behind her. She hadn't heard him approach. The marble floors that announced everyone else's movements went silent under his Italian leather shoes. He stood close enough that she could smell the bourbon on his breath, see the small scar on his jaw he'd gotten from a sailing accident in Martha's Vineyard. "Where, sir?" She kept her voice steady, her hand still on the bookshelf. He reached past her, his arm brushing hers, and pushed the red folder back into place. "There. Things should stay where they belong, don't you think?" "Yes, sir." He stayed there for a moment, studying her face. "You know you're different from the others." The others, the cleaning staff, they're usually, chatty, always trying to tell me about their kids, their problems, fishing for tips or sympathy." He tilted his head. "But you 6 months and I don't even know if you have a family." Kesha turned to face him fully, the mop handle between them like a barrier. "Would knowing change anything?" "No," he admitted with surprising honesty. "But it's curious. A woman who cleans for a living but never asks for anything extra, never complains, never tries to leverage sympathy." His eyes narrowed. "What's your angle, Kesha?" The sound of her name in his mouth, the first time he'd used it in 6 months, sent a chill down her spine. Not fear. Recognition. He was finally seeing her, really seeing her just as she'd planned. "No angle, Mr. Sterling, just work." He laughed again, but this time it was different. Uncertain. "Everyone has an angle. The doorman wants stock tips. The concierge wants Knicks tickets. Even my driver hints about his daughter's college tuition." He moved back to his desk, picked up a crystal paperweight, a miniature globe with gold continents. "But you just clean. Why?" She resumed, mopping, each stroke deliberate. "Maybe that's my angle. Being exactly what I appear to be. No one is exactly what they appear to be." He set down the paperweight with a decisive click. "For instance, I appear to be a successful real estate developer. Aren't you? I'm much more than that." He walked to the window again, hands clasped behind his back. "I'm a man who understands that this city runs on 2 currencies, money and information. And I trade in both." The confession hung in the air between them. Kesha continued mopping, processing what he'd just admitted. After 6 months of careful observation, he was finally starting to reveal himself, thinking she was too insignificant to matter. "Must be exhausting," she said quietly. He turned sharply. "What?" "Carrying all those secrets. Knowing where all the bodies are buried." She wrung out the mop water, swirling down the drain. "My grandmother used to say secrets are like stones in your pocket. 1 or 2 you don't notice. But eventually you're carrying so many you can't walk straight." "Is it, Sterling stared at her for a long moment. Then he walked to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a bottle of Macallan 25. He poured himself 3 fingers, then surprisingly poured a second glass. "Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman." He held out the second glass to her. Kesha looked at the glass. $500 worth of whiskey catching the light like liquid amber. She could take it play along, maybe get him to reveal more. Or she could maintain her boundaries, keep the careful distance she'd cultivated. "I don't drink on the job, Mr. Sterling." "Of course you don't." He set the glass down but didn't put it away. "Tell me, Kesha, what do you think about when you're cleaning? When you're doing the same repetitive motions day after day?" She considered her answer carefully. "I think about patterns. Patterns. Everything has a pattern. The way dust accumulates in corners. The coffee stains that appear every Tuesday on your desk. The lipstick marks on wine glasses after your Thursday meetings. Always the same shade, Max Ruby Woo." She paused, watching his expression shift. "Even the papers you leave out follow a pattern. Financial documents on Mondays, legal papers on Wednesdays, and on Fridays." "Yes." His voice had gone very quiet. "What about Fridays?" "On Fridays, you leave nothing out at all. Like you're cleaning up before the weekend. Or like you're expecting someone who shouldn't see anything." The silence stretched between them, taut as a wire. Sterling took a long sip of his whiskey, his eyes never leaving her face. "You're observant. It's part of the job, knowing what needs cleaning." He smiled then, but it didn't reach his eyes. "And what do you think needs cleaning here?" The question was loaded, dangerous. Kesha chose her words like stepping stones across a river. "Everything needs cleaning eventually, Mr. Sterling, even things that look spotless on the surface." His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowning. "The Brazilians are getting impatient." He looked back at her. "Finish up in here. I need to make some calls." He headed toward his home office, then paused at the doorway. "Kesha." "Yes, sir?" "That pattern you mentioned, about Fridays. You're right. Someone does come by on Fridays. Someone who values discretion above all else." He studied her face. "Can you be discreet? I've been cleaning your home for 6 months, Mr. Sterling. Have you heard a single word about your life from anyone?" He nodded slowly. "Fair point." He disappeared into his office, closing the door behind him. Kesha stood alone in the vast penthouse, her reflection multiplied in the windows. The marble, the polished surfaces. She pulled out her phone and typed a quick message to Marcus Thompson, the journalist she'd been corresponding with. "He's starting to trust me. Phase 2 begins now." She deleted the message immediately after sending, then reached into her card. It was time to let him find the calculus book. Time to let him think he'd discovered her secret, not knowing that her real secret was so much bigger than he could imagine. As she placed the textbook strategically on the floor beside her cart, she heard his voice through the office door, sharp and clear. "Tell the Brazilians we'll have their money cleaned and ready by Monday. Yes, all 40 million. The Sterling Foundation has plenty of charitable projects that need funding." Kesha smiled to herself as she recorded every word. Richard Sterling thought he was untouchable, protected by his wealth and connections. But he'd made one fatal mistake. He'd let her get close enough to see everything, thinking she was too insignificant to matter. In 3 hours, he would discover her studying. He would fire her in a rage, exactly as she'd planned. And then, with all the evidence she'd gathered, the real work would begin. The city lights twinkled below, unaware that in this penthouse high above, a janitor was about to bring down an empire built on generations of corruption. All it had taken was patience, intelligence, and the kind of invisibility that men like Sterling counted on. She resumed cleaning, humming softly to herself, a song her grandmother used to sing while working. A song about justice rolling down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. The calculus textbook lay open to page 247. Differential equations that Kesha had mastered 3 years ago but still reviewed to keep her mind sharp. She'd positioned herself perfectly cross-legged on the marble floor near the panoramic windows. Small flashlight creating a pool of light around her cleaning supplies arranged to show she'd finished her shift. The trap was set. Richard Sterling's footsteps echoed from the hallway. He always did a final walkthrough before bed, checking locks, adjusting thermostats, performing the rituals of a man who trusted no one. At 3:23 a.m., right on schedule, he entered the main living area. "What the hell are you doing here?" His voice cracked like a whip through the silence. Kesha looked up slowly, letting him see her surrounded by 3 notebooks, a scientific calculator, and mechanical pencils arranged with the precision of surgical instruments. She didn't scramble to hide anything. Instead, she closed the textbook with deliberate calm, her finger marking the page. "Mr. Sterling." Her voice carried that particular steadiness that comes from expecting exactly this moment. "I've finished cleaning. I was just reviewing some problems before heading home." He descended the marble stairs, each footstep sharp as a gavel strike. His silk pajamas, fret $3,000 for the set, caught the city lights as he moved. The smell of bourbon still clung to him, mixed with the bergamot from his evening shower. Reviewing problems. He laughed, but it was the laugh of a man who'd found a trespasser in his sanctuary. "Do you have any idea where you are? This is a $50 million penthouse, not your community college library." "I'm aware of where I am, Mr. Sterling." She began gathering her materials, movements unhurried. "I've cleaned every inch of it twice a week for 6 months. Get up." The command sliced through the air. "Stand up when I'm talking to you." Kesha rose slowly, her height putting her at eye level with his chest. She could see his pulse jumping in his throat, the vein that appeared when his control started slipping. She documented that tell in her notes. It appeared during phone calls about federal investigations, during meetings with lawyers about his ex-wife's claims. "And you think because you clean my home you have the right to use it as your personal study hall." He stepped closer, using his height to create pressure. "What else have you been doing here, going through my things, sitting on my furniture, pretending you belong?" "I've never touched anything beyond what I clean." Truth delivered with the precision of someone who knew exactly what she had touched and why. His eyes dropped to the textbook in her hands. "Advanced Calculus 3. You expect me to believe a cleaning lady understands differential equations?" "I don't expect you to believe anything about me, Mr. Sterling." Something flickered across his face, irritation mixing with curiosity. He snatched the notebook from her hands, flipping through pages of meticulous calculations. His expression shifted as he recognized the work wasn't just copied but understood, solved, mastered. Where did you get this? Did you steal it?" "The textbook is from the public library. The knowledge is from 3 years of night school while working 2 jobs." He threw the notebook back at her. It hit her chest before falling to the floor, pages splaying open. "Listen very carefully. People like you have a place in society, cleaning up after people like me. Don't embarrass yourself pretending to be something more." Kesha bent to retrieve the notebook, and as she did, she made sure he could see the other papers in her bag. Just a glimpse of what looked like bank statements, building permits, familiar letterheads. His intake of breath told her he'd noticed. "People like me," she repeated as she stood tasting each word. "You mean black women, working class, or just anyone whose net worth doesn't have 8 zeros? "I mean people who don't understand their limitations." His face had darkened, that particular flush that crept up from his collar when someone challenged his worldview. "You want to know the difference between us? I could buy and sell 1,000 people like you without checking my bank balance. You're replaceable, forgettable, a line item in my monthly expenses filed under miscellaneous household." Kesha smiled then. Not broadly, just a slight upturn of her lips that made him step back. "You're right about one thing. I am a line item in your expenses, payroll records dated and documented. 6 months of being in your home at specific times with specific access, observing specific things. Is that a threat? It's an observation. Like noting that you always take your calls about the Phoenix accounts on the terrace thinking the wind prevents recording. Or that Judge Morrison's wife doesn't know about the Thursday poker games because he tells her he's at a prayer group." The color drained from Sterling's face, then rushed back in a wave of rage. "You've been spying on me." "I've been cleaning, Mr. Sterling. It's not my fault you conduct business in front of someone you consider furniture." His hand moved to his phone. "You're done. Fired. I'm calling your agency right now." It's 3:47 a.m. I don't care if it's Christmas morning. He was already scrolling through contacts. "You'll never work in this city again. I'll make sure every cleaning service, every household, every minimum wage employer knows that Kesha Williams is a security risk." She watched him make the call, leaving a volcanic message on the agency's voicemail. When he finished, he turned back to her with the satisfaction of a man who'd just crushed an insect. "Get out now. And if you ever speak about anything you think you've heard in this house, I'll bury you in lawsuits until your grandchildren are paying legal fees." Kesha picked up her supplies, movements measured and calm. At the door, she paused and turned back to him. "Mr. Sterling, have you ever heard the saying about not underestimating those who are always watching? Get out." She shifted her bag, making sure he saw the papers again. Just enough to plant the seed of worry. "You know what's interesting about being invisible? People show you their true selves. They make calls about moving 40 million through the Cayman accounts. They leave construction permits for federal housing projects that somehow became luxury condos. They discuss bribing city officials like they're ordering lunch." Sterling's face had gone pale. "You don't know what you're talking about. Differential equations aren't the only patterns I can solve, Mr. Sterling." She opened the door. "Oh, and that Friday visitor you mentioned, the one who values discretion. You might want to tell Commissioner Bradley that his wife hired a private investigator. She knows about the accounts in his daughter's name." She left him standing there, mouth open, calculating how much she actually knew versus what she was guessing. The beauty was that she knew everything. Dates, amounts, account numbers, recorded conversations. 6 months of evidence that would stand up in federal court. The service elevator descended slowly and Kesha pulled out her phone. 3 text messages waiting. "Marcus Thompson, ready when you are." Her mother, "Baby, you're late coming home. Everything okay?" Her sister Jennifer, "Kesha, the rent's due tomorrow. Did you get paid?" She responded to Marcus first. He took the bait, fired me with prejudice. Begin phase 3. To her mother, "Everything's perfect, Mama, coming home now." To Jennifer, "Don't worry about rent anymore, ever." 3 weeks later, Kesha sat in the downtown public library's quiet study room. 17 manila folders spread across the table like cards in a high-stakes game. Each folder contained a different piece of Richard Sterling's empire, dissected with the precision of a surgeon who'd studied the anatomy for months. The knock on the door was gentle but purposeful. Marcus Thompson entered, his press badge still swinging from the confrontation with City Hall security. His notebook was already out, pen uncapped. "They tried to stop me from accessing the public records," he said, pulling out a chair. "But your tip about the secondary filing system was perfect. Found everything." Kesha pushed 3 folders toward him. Construction permits. Original applications versus what was actually built. Every single federal grant diverted. Marcus opened the first folder, his eyes widening. Jesus Christ. The Riverside project alone. That's 18 million in federal funds that were supposed to house 200 families. 212 families, Kesha corrected. "I have the original waiting list. Some of those people are still homeless, waiting for units that got turned into penthouses, selling for 3 million each." Her phone buzzed. A text from her former supervisor at the cleaning agency. "Mr. Sterling called again, offering $10,000 for your personal information." What should I tell him? She showed Marcus the message. He whistled low. He's scared. He should be. She opened her laptop, showing him a spreadsheet that mapped every transaction, every shell company, every bribe. But we need one more piece. The smoking gun that connects him directly to Commissioner Bradley's office. The Friday meetings. Exactly. Bradley visits every Friday at 11 p.m. after Sterling's security does their rounds. They think they're being careful, but Bradley's driver always idles outside the Starbucks on 47th. Same spot, same time. The driver thinks he's invisible, but he live streams gaming sessions while waiting. His phone's GPS puts him there every week. Marcus was taking rapid notes. We could subpoena the phone records. We don't need to. Kesha pulled out a small device no bigger than a matchbox. This was magnetized to the underside of Sterling's desk for the last 3 months. Voice-activated recording cloud upload completely legal under New York's one-party consent law because I was present during the initial installation. You were cleaning such a no. I was in the room. That makes me a party to any conversation that occurred in my presence. She smiled. I studied the law very carefully, Marcus. Every recording is admissible. She pressed play on her laptop. Richard Sterling's voice filled the room clear and damning. Hey Bradley, the Riverside funds are already in the Phoenix account. 20% to your daughter's trust as agreed. Commissioner Bradley's response, and the inspectors, they'll sign off on the luxury conversions. Already handled. Martinez wants a bigger cut, but I told him to be grateful for what he gets. Marcus stopped writing, his hand trembling slightly. This is enough to bring down half the city's development commission. Keep listening. The recording continued. Sterling laughing, the clink of glasses audible. You know what the beautiful part is? We're using federal poverty relief funds to build luxury housing, then selling those units to Chinese investors who will never even live in them. It's brilliant. The poor stay poor, the rich get richer. Bradley agreed. Though we need to be careful. That new journalist Thompson, he's been sniffing around. Marcus's face went pale. They knew about him. Sterling's voice again. Don't worry about Thompson. If he gets too close, I have enough judges in my pocket to bury him in legal fees. Besides, who's going to believe him, a nobody freelancer against the Sterling empire? Kesha stopped the recording. There's 6 hours of this. Names, dates, amounts, every crime documented. When do we publish Album Torchetta? Monday morning, 6 a.m. Before the markets open, before Sterling can move his money, before anyone can run. Marcus hesitated. Kesha, once this comes out, they'll come after you. Sterling has connections everywhere, police, judges, politicians. She opened another folder revealing photographs of documents. So do I now. Every person he's bribed is also someone who'd throw him under the bus to save themselves. Commissioner Bradley's already under investigation for his mistress's suspicious income. Judge Morrison's gambling debts are about to be called in by people Sterling can't control. They'll all flip on him to cut deals. You've thought of everything. I had 6 months to plan. She pulled out a final document. But there's something else, something personal. It was a college transcript. Advanced Mathematics, Economics, Forensic Accounting. Graduated summa cum laude from State University. You have a degree. I have 2. The second is in criminal justice, completed online while working nights. She traced her finger along the paper. 47 job applications to financial firms, all rejected. The ones that bothered to respond said I wasn't a cultural fit. So I decided to get close to the culture, study it from the inside. Marcus looked at her with new understanding. You targeted Sterling specifically. He was the biggest, the dirtiest, and the most arrogant. He once gave a speech at my university about knowing your place in the economic ecosystem. I sat in the back row, invisible even then, and decided that my place was wherever I chose to put myself. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She put it on speaker. Miss Williams. The voice was nervous, young. This is Timothy Chen from Sterling's legal team. Mr. Sterling would like to meet with you. He's prepared to offer a substantial settlement for your discretion. How substantial? $5 million, cash untraceable. Marcus's eyes widened. Kesha remained calm. Tell Mr. Sterling I'll meet him tonight, his penthouse, 11 p.m. He'll be expecting you. She hung up. Marcus grabbed her arm. You can't seriously be considering... I'm not considering anything. But he needs to believe he can buy me. It'll keep him in the penthouse, prevent him from running. She stood gathering the folders. Besides, I want to see his face when he realizes that his money can't save him this time. That evening, Kesha stood in front of her bathroom mirror in the small apartment she shared with her mother and sisters. She pulled on the same uniform she'd worn for 6 months, pressed and clean. Her mother appeared in the doorway. "And baby, you sure about this?" Barbara Williams had the kind of face that told stories without words. 40 years of double shifts raised 3 girls alone, never complained once. Her hands, swollen from arthritis she couldn't afford to properly treat, rested on Kesha's shoulders. "He needs to see me as he always has, Mama. The help, insignificant." "You were never insignificant." "I know, but he doesn't. That's why I'll win." Her sister Jennifer poked her head in. "The reporter's here, Marcus." Marcus stood in their living room looking uncomfortable among the second-hand furniture and water-stained ceiling. But his discomfort turned to respect as he saw the walls covered in academic achievement awards, all belonging to the Williams sisters. "Ready?" he asked. "A change of plans," Kesha said. "You're not coming." "Ooh, what, Kesha? It's dangerous." "I need you at the newspaper. If anything happens to me, publish everything immediately." She handed him a flash drive. "Every document, every recording, every piece of evidence. But if I walk out of there safe, we wait until Monday as planned." "This is insane. This is justice." She pulled on her coat, the same thin jacket she'd worn through 3 winters. "My grandmother used to say, when you go to slay a dragon, make sure your sword is sharp and your cause is just. My sword is sharp, Marcus, and my cause has been just since the day I was born, black and poor, in a country that treats both as crimes." The ride to Sterling's building was silent. The doorman, who'd seen her hundreds of times, didn't even look up as she passed. The service elevator carried her up, that familiar grinding sound, now seeming like fanfare for what was coming. Sterling was waiting in the penthouse, dressed in a Tom Ford suit that cost more than most cars. The coffee table held a briefcase and documents. Kesha. He said her name like it tasted bitter. "Drink?" "No." "Straight to business, then." He opened the briefcase, revealing stacks of $100 bills. $5 million. All you have to do is sign this NDA and disappear, move away, start over, live the life you've been pretending to dream about with your little math books. She walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. "You know what's funny, Mr. Sterling? From up here, the city looks so clean. You can't see the homeless camps under the bridges. Can't smell the sewage backing up in housing projects. Can't hear the children crying because their parents work 3 jobs and still can't afford medicine. You spare me the sociology lecture. Do you want the money or not?" She turned to face him. "I've been doing the math. $5 million. Invested conservatively, that's about $200,000 a year in returns. Enough to live comfortably. Pay for my sister's education. Get my mother proper health care." "Exactly." His relief was visible. "You're smart enough to know this is your only chance at that kind of money. But here's the thing." She pulled out her phone, showing him a recording app already running. "That $5 million, it's less than what you stole from just one housing project. The Riverside development alone. You diverted $18 million meant for families like mine." His face darkened. "You're recording this. No need. You already confessed everything to Commissioner Bradley, every Friday for 6 months." She played a snippet of the recording, his own voice discussing bribes and fraud. Sterling lunged for her phone. She stepped aside, letting him stumble. "You planted bugs in my home." "I didn't need to plant anything. You conducted your crimes in front of me, assuming I was too stupid to understand, too powerless to act." She pulled out a folder from her bag. "Every document you left out photographed. Every conversation you had while I cleaned recorded. Every financial crime cataloged and cross-referenced. Those recordings are illegal. No court will accept them. One-party consent state, Mr. Sterling. I was present, working during every recording, completely legal. Your own lawyers will confirm that." He sank into his leather chair, the same one where he'd conducted million-dollar deals. "What do you want?" "Nothing from you. Everything you have is stolen anyway." She walked to the door. "The story publishes Monday morning. Your assets will be frozen by noon. The FBI will arrest you by evening. Your empire built on the backs of people like me will crumble within a week. I'll destroy you. I have judges, police commissioners, who are all named in my evidence. They'll be too busy saving themselves to help you." She paused at the door. "You were right about one thing, though. People like me do have a place in society. We're the ones who remember every injustice, document every crime, and wait for the perfect moment to balance the scales. You're making a mistake. You could have had 5 million. I'll have something better. Justice, and a consulting job with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. They're very interested in my unique skill set, understanding how men like you operate because I've been invisible in your world for so long." She left him there, still sitting in his chair, staring at the briefcase full of useless money. As the elevator descended, she texted Marcus, "It's done. Publish everything. Monday, 6 or 0 a.m. Richard Sterling woke to 37 missed calls, his phone vibrating so violently it fell off the nightstand. The first message was from his lawyer. "Richard, for God's sake, turn on the news." He grabbed the remote, hands trembling from the previous night's bourbon and Xanax combination. Every channel showed his face. CNN, Fox, MSNBC, all running the same story with different levels of sensationalism. A breaking Sterling empire built on stolen federal funds. The Billionaire's fraud exposed by cleaning lady, or the housekeeper who brought down a real estate dynasty. His photograph, the one from last year's Forbes profile where he'd been named Developer of the Decade, was now captioned "Alleged Mastermind of $847 million Fraud Scheme." The remote slipped from his fingers as Marcus Thompson appeared on screen, standing outside the federal courthouse. "The evidence is overwhelming. We have recordings, documents, financial records showing a systematic theft of federal poverty relief funds diverted into luxury developments and offshore accounts." Sterling stumbled to his home office, yanking open drawers, searching for the Phoenix account documents. Gone. The red folder that had been tucked between his books, empty. His laptop wouldn't unlock. The FBI had already frozen his digital assets remotely. Another phone call. This time James Morrison, the judge who'd been his poker companion for 15 years. "You son of a bitch." Morrison's voice was strained. "They have recordings of us discussing the Martinez bribery. My career is over." "James, listen." "No, you listen. My lawyer says the only way I avoid prison is full cooperation. I'm testifying against you, Richard. We all are." The line went dead. Sterling tried to call back, but Morrison had already blocked his number. His phone rang again. The bank. "Mr. Sterling, this is Patricia Chen from Private Wealth Management. The FBI has frozen all your accounts pending investigation. Your credit cards have been suspended. The mortgage company is initiating foreclosure proceedings on all 17 properties. You can't do this. I have rights." "You had rights. Past tense." "Also, the board of Sterling Development held an emergency meeting this morning. You've been removed as CEO effective immediately." She hung up. Sterling stood in his office, still in his pajamas, watching his empire crumble in real time. The morning light streaming through the windows seemed harsh, accusatory. Illuminating every surface where Kesha had worked, gathered evidence built her case. 3 blocks away in the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, Kesha sat in a conference room with Special Agent Diana Torres, walking through evidence that had taken the Bureau 3 minutes to verify and 3 hours to fully appreciate. "This is meticulous," Torres said, scrolling through the digital files. "You documented everything. Dates, times, amounts, even weather conditions during outdoor meetings." "Details matter," Kesha replied, wearing a simple black suit she'd bought with her first FBI consultant check. "Mr. Sterling taught me that. He once said 7 minutes could cost $7 million. He was right. The 7 minutes he spent confessing to Commissioner Bradley cost him everything. We're preparing arrest warrants for 37 individuals based on your evidence. This is the largest corruption case in the city's history." A knock on the door. An assistant entered, handing Torres a note. She read it, eyebrows rising. "Sterling's at his penthouse. He's barricaded himself inside, refusing to come out." Kesha stood. Let me talk to him. Absolutely not. You're a witness. I'm the only person who truly understands him. His pride won't let him surrender to strangers. But to me, the cleaning lady who outsmarted him, that's the ending his ego needs. To know he was beaten by someone he considered nothing. Torres considered, then nodded. You wear a wire. Full tactical team backup. An hour later, Kesha stood outside Sterling's penthouse, now surrounded by FBI agents. The door was locked, but she still had her service key. He'd never thought to change the locks after firing her. She entered alone, finding him on the terrace, standing dangerously close to the edge. The wind whipped his hair, his suit jacket flapping like broken wings. Come to gloat, he asked without turning around. And come to make sure you face justice, not escape it. He laughed bitterly. Justice, you destroyed everything I built over 30 years. You destroyed it yourself the moment you stole from those who had nothing. She stepped onto the terrace, maintaining distance. 212 families, Mr. Sterling. That's how many people were supposed to live in Riverside. Instead, you built 40 luxury condos for foreign investors. It's business. It's theft. She pulled out her phone, showing him a photograph. This is Tamika Washington, 7 years old. She's been homeless for 3 years, waiting for a Riverside unit. Her mother works 2 jobs but can't afford rent because people like you turned housing into commodity instead of necessity. I don't want to hear this, but you will. Marcus Thompson, remember him? The journalist you called a nobody freelancer. His story has been picked up by every major outlet. The Times, The Post, The Guardian. You're internationally famous now, but not how you wanted. Sterling turned to face her, his eyes red-rimmed. His perfect facade finally cracked. Why did you do this? Because my grandmother died in a hospital waiting room while rich patients got treated first. Because my mother's arthritis went untreated for years while she cleaned houses for people who spent more on wine than she made in a month. Because my sisters had to share textbooks while your children went to Swiss boarding schools. That's not my fault. No, but exploiting that system is. Building your wealth on suffering is. Looking at me for 6 months and never seeing a human being is. She stepped closer. You want to know the real irony? If you'd treated me with basic respect, I might have just stayed invisible. But you had to humiliate me, had to make sure I knew my place. Red and blue lights flashed below. Media vans lined the street. Sterling looked down at the crowd gathering. They're all waiting for me to jump. They're waiting for you to face consequences. There's a difference. What consequences? Prison. I'm 42 years old. 25 to life means I die in a cell. You'll die having faced what you did. That's more dignity than you gave your victims. He slumped against the railing. I could have given you 5 million. And then what? You'd go on stealing more families destroyed so you could have another yacht. She shook her head. Your money was never going to save you, Mr. Sterling. It was just going to make you think you were untouchable a little longer. FBI agents appeared in the doorway. Sterling saw them, straightened his tie, even now maintaining appearances, and walked toward them with his hands visible. Richard Sterling, you're under arrest for wire fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, and violation of federal housing regulations. As they cuffed him, he looked back at Kesha. You planned this from the beginning. From the moment you gave that speech at my university about knowing your place. You stood at that podium in your $5,000 suit and told a room full of struggling students that poverty was a character flaw. That wealth was proof of superiority. You were there, back row, invisible even in a crowded auditorium, taking notes on everything you said, every company you mentioned, every weakness you revealed. She smiled, that same enigmatic expression that had haunted him. You taught me exactly how to destroy you. I should thank you for the education. The agents led him away past the cameras, past the neighbors who'd emerged to watch. The Sterling Empire's fall was complete, captured in high definition for the world to see. 6 months later, the federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan buzzed with anticipation. Room 318 was packed beyond capacity, journalists, squeezed into every corner, sketch artists capturing the scene. Richard Sterling sat at the defendant's table, his orange jumpsuit a stark contrast to the Armani suits gathering dust in federal evidence lockers. Kesha Williams sat in the witness stand, her posture straight, voice clear as she answered the prosecutor's questions. She wore a navy suit, not expensive but perfectly fitted, purchased with her first month's salary as senior financial crimes analyst for the FBI. "Miss Williams," the prosecutor continued, "can you explain how you first discovered the Phoenix accounts?" Mr. Sterling kept a red folder between his first edition Shakespeare and a gold-embossed Bible he never read. "During my third month of employment, I observed him reference it during calls about federal housing grants." The folder contained routing numbers for accounts in the Cayman Islands linked to shell companies registered in Delaware. Sterling's new lawyer, the third one after the first two dropped him when their retainers bounced, objected. "Speculation about my client's reading habits is prejudicial." "Overruled," Judge Catherine Chen responded. "The witness is providing context for her observations." Kesha continued, methodical and precise. For 3 hours, she laid out the empire's corruption like a professor teaching a masterclass. The gallery listened rapt as she explained shell companies, money laundering, bribery networks, all in language clear enough for the jury to understand. The Riverside development diverted $18.3 million in federal funds. The East Side project, $24.7 million. The Marina restoration, $31.2 million. In total, I documented $847 million stolen from programs designed to help low-income families. And where did this money go? Offshore accounts, luxury developments, and bribes. Commissioner Bradley alone received $3.4 million through his daughter's trust fund. In the gallery, Commissioner Bradley sat in his own orange jumpsuit awaiting his turn. He'd been arrested trying to board a flight to Montenegro, a non-extradition country. Judge Morrison was 3 rows back, his plea deal requiring him to testify against his former poker companions. During lunch recess, Kesha sat with Marcus Thompson in the courthouse cafeteria. His investigative series had won a Pulitzer nomination, and 3 publishers were bidding on his book rights. "Did you know Sterling's wife filed for divorce?" Marcus said, scrolling through his phone. "She's claiming she had no knowledge of his crimes." "She didn't," Kesha confirmed. "He kept her ignorant on purpose. Easier to control the narrative that way. His kids, the oldest is at Harvard Law, wants to become a public defender. The youngest transferred to public school, changed her last name to her mother's maiden name." Kesha sipped her coffee. "They're not their father. Speaking of family, how's yours?" Kesha smiled. A real smile, not the calculated expression she'd worn for months. "Mama retired, finally getting proper treatment for her arthritis. Jennifer started pre-med at Columbia, full scholarship. Tracy's at NYU Law. And you, besides the FBI work, I'm teaching a night course at the community college. Financial literacy and social justice. We discuss how economic systems perpetuate inequality, how to recognize exploitation, how to fight back. Full circle. Not quite." She pulled out her phone, showing him an email. "The Department of Justice wants me to lead a new task force, investigating systematic discrimination in federal contracting. Turns out Sterling wasn't unique, just the most brazen." Back in the courtroom, the afternoon session began with Sterling's cross-examination. His lawyer tried to paint Kesha as a vindictive employee, someone who'd planned this from the beginning. "Isn't it true, Miss Williams, that you specifically targeted my client for employment?" "Yes." The admission caused murmurs. The lawyer smiled, thinking he'd won a point. "Can you explain why?" "Because Mr. Sterling represented everything wrong with how wealth is accumulated in America. He gave a speech at my university claiming poverty was a moral failing. I wanted to see if his wealth came from moral superiority or systemic exploitation." "And what did you conclude, Mom?" "That he was a criminal who happened to have better lawyers than his victims." "Objection. Sustained. The jury will disregard that last characterization." But the damage was done. The jury had heard it, processed it, filed it away. The defense tried another angle. You violated my client's privacy. You recorded him without his knowledge. I recorded conversations that occurred in my presence while I was performing my employment duties. New York is a one-party consent state. Every recording is legal and admissible. You stole documents. I photographed evidence of crimes that were left in plain sight. If Mr. Sterling didn't want his crimes documented, he shouldn't have committed them in front of witnesses. Sterling couldn't contain himself. You were supposed to be cleaning. Judge Chen banged her gavel. Mr. Sterling, you'll remain silent. But his outburst revealed everything. The rage of a man who'd been outsmarted by someone he deemed inferior. The jury saw it, understood it, judged it. 1 year later, the news ticker at the bottom of the screen read, Richard Sterling sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. Above it, footage played of him being led away in shackles, his empire officially dissolved, his assets distributed to the victims of his housing fraud. Kesha didn't watch. She was too busy in her new office at the Department of Justice reviewing applications for the Anti-Corruption Task Force. Her desk, solid oak, practical, not ostentatious, held 3 photos: her family at Jennifer's white coat ceremony, her grandmother's portrait, and one from her college graduation that no one had attended because she'd been too ashamed to tell her family she was graduating while working as a janitor. A knock on her door. Director Williams. She still wasn't used to the title. Come in. A young woman entered, nervous but determined. Maria Santos, according to her file. 23, first-generation college graduate applying for an entry-level analyst position. Ms. Santos, tell me why you want to work in financial crimes. Because my family lost their home in 2008. Predatory lending, fraudulent mortgage terms. The bank executives got bonuses while we lived in our car for 6 months. Maria's voice strengthened. I want to be part of making sure that never happens to another family. Kesha saw herself in this young woman. The anger transformed into purpose, the personal made powerful. The work is hard. You'll be fighting people with unlimited resources, connections, lawyers who charge more per hour than most people make in a month. I know. They'll underestimate you because of your age, your gender, your background. Good, let them. Kesha smiled, remembering her own words to Marcus. When do you want to start? Tomorrow. Monday. We have 17 active investigations, including 3 senators and a Supreme Court justice's spouse. You'll need the weekend to prepare. As Maria left, energized and purposeful, Kesha turned to look out her window. Not at a penthouse view of the city's skyline, but at the street level where real people lived real lives, struggling against systems designed to keep them struggling. Her phone rang. Marcus Thompson. Did you see Sterling's trying to appeal? You let him. Every appeal means more evidence becomes public, more people see what he did. He's claiming ineffective counsel. He had the best lawyers money could buy. They just couldn't defend the indefensible. There's something else, Marcus said. I'm interviewing him tomorrow for my book. Any message you want me to pass along? Kesha considered. Tell him the calculus textbook was from the library. Page 247, differential equations. The same math that shows how compound interest traps people in poverty, how predatory lending multiplies suffering exponentially. That's it. He'll understand, or he won't. Either way, it doesn't matter anymore. After hanging up, she returned to her files. Another developer in Chicago running the same scheme Sterling had perfected. Different name, same crime. But now she had a team, resources, and most importantly, the knowledge that invisible people see everything. 3 years later, the Harvard Kennedy School of Government's auditorium was packed for the annual Justice in America lecture series. Kesha Williams, now deputy director of the DOJ's Financial Crimes Division, stood at the podium where Richard Sterling had once delivered his infamous speech about knowing your place. 5 years ago, she began. A man stood at this very podium and told students that poverty was a character flaw, that wealth was evidence of superiority. That man is now in federal prison, his wealth revealed as theft, his superiority as delusion. The audience, students, professors, activists, listened intently. But I'm not here to talk about him. I'm here to talk about the thousands of people still trapped in the systems he exploited. The families waiting for affordable housing that will never be built. The workers earning minimum wage while creating billions in value. The students taking on lifetime debt for the chance at a future. She clicked to her first slide, a photo of her old cleaning uniform. This is what I wore while gathering evidence against Sterling. Some of you might think it's a disguise, a costume I put on to fool him, but it wasn't. It was my real life, my real job, my real struggle. The only disguise was his, pretending that his wealth came from merit rather than manipulation. A student raised her hand. Director Williams, what advice would you give to those of us who feel powerless against systematic inequality? Document everything. Learn the language of power, legal, financial, political. Understand that your invisibility is both burden and weapon. They don't see you coming because they don't see you at all. Another question. Do you regret destroying Sterling's life? I didn't destroy his life. I revealed it. There's a difference between breaking something and showing it was already broken. After the lecture, Kesha walked through Cambridge past coffee shops where students debated philosophy, past buildings where future leaders were being trained. Her phone buzzed. Jennifer, now in her residency at Johns Hopkins. I saw your speech online. Proud of you, sis. How's the rotation? Exhausting. Worth it. Had a patient today, homeless veteran, reminded me why we do this. The work matters, Jen. The work matters, her sister agreed. That evening, back in her Arlington apartment, modest but comfortable, Kesha sat at her kitchen table reviewing case files. The Sterling investigation had spawned 17 additional prosecutions, recovered $2.3 billion in stolen funds, and led to federal legislation requiring transparency in housing development funding. But there were hundreds more Sterlings out there, men and women who built fortunes on suffering, who saw poverty as opportunity for exploitation. The work would never be finished. Her laptop chimed. An encrypted email from an anonymous source. I'm a janitor at Prometheus Capital. I've been documenting something you need to see. Kesha smiled, remembering herself 6 years ago gathering evidence in secret planning. The downfall of someone who thought themselves untouchable. She began typing a response. I'm listening, tell me everything, and remember, they never see us coming. Outside her window, Washington, D.C. glittered with lights. Somewhere in federal prison, Richard Sterling lay in a narrow bunk, counting the days, 8:30 to go. Somewhere in New York, another cleaner was pushing a cart through marble hallways, observing, documenting, waiting. The cycle continued. But now, thanks to one woman who refused to stay invisible, the powerful knew to look over their shoulders, to wonder about the people they ignored, to fear the quiet ones taking notes. Just as Kesha had learned, wasn't a lightning strike. It was water wearing away stone. Patient, persistent, inevitable. Her grandmother would have been proud. Epilogue 5 years later. The Federal Bureau of Prisons database showed Richard Sterling, inmate 478-31054. Working in the prison library teaching literacy to other inmates. His application for early release had been denied 3 times. His fortune was gone, distributed among 3847 families affected by his crimes. Kesha Williams had been nominated for Attorney General. During her confirmation hearing, a senator asked about her background. I was a janitor, she said simply. I cleaned the offices where crimes were planned. Now I clean up the crimes themselves. The senator, who had his own suspicious real estate dealings, shifted uncomfortably. She was confirmed 93-7. On her first day as Attorney General, she instituted a new policy. All DOJ buildings would pay their cleaning staff a living wage, provide full benefits, and offer educational opportunities. Because, she said at the press conference, the people who clean up after us see everything. It's time we started seeing them. In the audience, her mother, Barbara Williams, sat in the front row wearing a new dress and her grandmother's pearl necklace. Beside her, Jennifer in her doctor's coat, Tracy with her bar certification fresh in hand. They had traveled from invisible to undeniable, and they were just getting started. The screen faded to black with white text. Based on true events that happen every day in every city wherever power thinks itself safe from consequence. For every Richard Sterling, there is a Kesha Williams. He's watching, documenting, waiting. Justice is patient. Justice remembers. Justice knows how to clean up.